Hello, welcome to Some Notes on Style. I'm your host, Joseph. This week we're going to take a look at the English country winter staple of a heavy-duty oilcloth or waxed cotton jacket. First we'll run through a couple little facts and tidbits, then we're going to look at 15 examples, mostly in more of a collection format that I've put together. It has a pretty consistent color story of how you could wear this very traditional garment in maybe a little edgier kind of way. Now, to be honest, I always just defaulted to calling these things oilcloth jackets. A lot of times you hear people use these terms interchangeably, oilcloth, waxed cotton jackets. But in researching this video, I began to learn some of the finer nuances between these two terms, which is actually quite a big distinction. Now, true oilcloth is made by coating heavy-duty canvas material in linseed oil with combinations of oil fats and lead, which created a slick, heavy coated layer to the fabric that would hold up to the elements quite well. However, when this fabric needed to be stitched into clothing, the stitching would actually create perforations, breaking any of this coating. So many true oilcloth garments had to have partial capes over the shoulders without any seam lines, which would help to add a double layer of weatherproofing to the jacket. Oilcloth was somewhat short-lived and limited in its function in garment making because it was almost a little bit too much to practically wear this material as a true raincoat. Now, waxed cotton, on the other hand, is another type of coated fabric, obviously, but in this instance, the coating is a derivative of beeswax or paraffin, making the material much more manageable and lighter weight and easier to construct into garments. Now, waxed cotton has been used since the 15th century when sailors realized that wet sails performed better than dry ones. So in order to recreate the attributes of a soggy sail without the same amount of water weight, they began to experiment by applying fish oils and grease to sailcloth fabric. Then if they had any scraps left over when they were making their sails, they could throw some on over their shoulders and make a makeshift cape, which would keep them nice and dry as well. And of course this became refined further and further, and so they began to use paraffin wax, aka beeswax, in a much more refined process. Sometimes even getting to the point where they could begin to coat the yarns during the fabric weaving process, thus making a more ingrained coating within the cloth construction. So in the early 20th century, several fabric mills, notably British Milleraine, and thus garment manufacturers began to integrate these cloths into functional, rugged outdoor jackets. So this is where these companies began to firmly plant themselves as foul weather staples in the modern country wardrobe. And perhaps not surprisingly, the companies that did this very well happened to be British companies, whose products seemed perfectly suited to that damp, moderate English climate, namely J. Barbour and Sons, making waxed cotton jackets for outdoorsmen and farmers. Then another popular British jacket maker, Belstaff, came along, making a sportier variation favored by early motorcycle enthusiasts. Although these days the Barbour jacket has pretty much become shorthand to cover the entire category. But savvy shoppers can easily find all kinds of different brands which offer their own variation on waxed cotton jackets, like Ralph Lauren, Filson, Orvis, LL Bean, J. Crew, and Patagonia. Then of course there's much more fashion brands like Sid Mashburn, Billy Reed, Buck Mason, Huckberry, or even Thursday Boot Company. But of course, Barbour and Belstaff remain the true OGs of the category, and each offer a huge range of styles, variations, and fits for true country functional use, as well as more recently appropriated urban fashion styling. And speaking of appropriated, I saw last week Derek Guy from Dye Workwear had a nice series of posts regarding Barbour jackets and how they could be worn, but also mentioned something that I was not aware of. The Barbour jacket, at least in England and parts of Europe, is becoming somewhat tightly associated with nationalist far-right groups, so I think it's up to the rest of us to make sure that this classic wardrobe staple piece can be worn in a way in which we all can enjoy its benefits and do not have to align ourselves with some radical ideologies. And perhaps another possible bruised eye association, maybe not nearly as extreme, is just the more recent blandness or generic midtown finance bro association of the Barbour jacket when it's worn in its most generic way, say with some dark wash blue jeans and some random white Oxford shirt. Which is a shame because in reality none of these pieces in and of themselves are particularly wrong. Maybe we can just try a little harder to be a little more creative. try to incorporate some of the language of the English country clothing without going too overboard, we can think about the depths of colors found within the waxed cotton and oilcloths, which usually range from deep jet black through to earthy browns and muddy olives, which, by the way, originally came from the color of the metals oxidizing in the oils in the oilcloth. But either way, this color palette of these nice, wintry, rich, deep, waxy earth tones can be a great jumping off point, which I pulled together for this small collection of looks. Then another thing I tried to incorporate is that the Barbour jacket, similarly to the Burberry jacket, has this iconic signature plaid, which they line a great deal of their products in. This is a very beautiful plaid, which accents the colors of the Barbour jacket very nicely with a deep navy, olive, and red overcheck. So as a variation on this and a nod to a little bit of that English heritage, I also incorporated some traditional tartan as a secondary pattern in some of these looks in different pieces. Now, as far as the jackets go, I'm somewhat limited to my own personal collection. I've got a true Barbour jacket, the Ashby model, in a waxed cotton canvas and olive. And then of course I got two Ralph Lauren pieces. One is a Belstaff adjacent sample, which was made up for Ralph Lauren Black Label a few years ago. I believe this thing is a true oilcloth because its surface is much slicker and oilier than Barbour's waxed cotton. This thing is such an edgy statement piece, sometimes it's a bit much to work around. But then again, so are Belstaff jackets. They run less along the line of an English country farmer, more like some sort of motorcycle rebel's black leather jacket. So sometimes the language around the black leather jacket can be intertwined with the Belstaff motocross style, so you get this really cool edgy piece. Then the third jacket I have in my collection is another true oilcloth. This is a polo Ralph Lauren jacket. It's cut in more of an overcoat style, which can be worn as a true raincoat. One more disclaimer, obviously since this piece is mostly just about oilcloth and wax jackets and not necessarily about a particular brand or a full range of pieces that are available currently on the market now, I put this collection together with most of my own archives, which obviously due to my previous work experience is mostly head to toe Ralph Lauren. So I'm not necessarily going to be calling out individual brands or pieces with each look. So with that, let's take a look at some outfits. So number one, wear a tie and a cardigan. So certainly a nod to the classic English country style. I mean, you're going to be a little bit formal, so you've got a nice collared shirt and a tie. This certainly is a very traditional classic look, but the cardigan sweater acts as a type of vest waistcoat layer. It's certainly casual enough. It can be worn around the house or a little bit more leisurely rather than a full-on sport jacket. The cardigan gives this nice kind of mid-layer. It's this moment to get a little touch of texture in either cotton, merino, wool, cashmere, in these deep olive shades in these examples. For shirts, you can throw in either a tattersall or a chambray shirt. As long as you got a nice English spread collar or a button-down collar, it makes for a fine pairing with a wool necktie. In these instances, I've got either a tartan plaid or a woven wool chalet tie. And then down below, look on the left, I've got a nice dark wash pair of blue jeans. It really plays off the texture you get in that waxed cotton. Then look on the right, I've got a classic pair of gray wool flannel trousers, which always seem to pair with absolutely everything in your closet. Number two, step it up with a true sport jacket layer. Obviously, for those slightly chillier days, if you're going to be spending a little more time outdoors or you're going to be going to a more formal public setting, you could trade out that nice cozy cardigan for a full-on sport jacket. Again, keeping in the traditional English country custom, you can get a beautifully rich Shetland or Harris tweed like we see on the guy on the right. Tweed's texture and patterning will infinitely give endless combinations. It has a wonderful scratchy wool contrast against the slickness of that oilcloth outer layer. In the middle, I got a quilted down jacket cut into a sport coat style. Quilted nylon down can be worn as a zip-up vest or a liner jacket, and similar to the tweed, you got this really cool textural contrast. In this case, the waxed cotton and the down quilting language seems totally in line with one another. Of course, in this case, I've also got some really nice, deep, rich olive corduroys and wellies down below. A flannel shirt and a wool tie, so you got this collection of wonderfully traditional English materials all telling this rich heritage story all in one outfit. Look on the left, I got another wool tweed jacket, in this case in this great exploded tartan pattern. Again, a very traditional motif, picks up somewhat on the Barbour jacket plaid lining, With these kind of looks, the elements and the pieces are certainly very much in line with tradition, but what I think you can do to update these very traditional silhouettes is to focus on the deep, rich colors and patterns so that overall you get a richer, more modern look with darker tones. Number 3, keep it simple. Okay, so speaking of modernizing, probably the easiest way to wear this style of jacket is just take it down a few notches. Don't worry about the traditional country English language of tweed jackets and wool ties. In these looks, you can wear it very simply. First guy on the left has a merino wool turtleneck in this marled brown colorway. The turtleneck adds a really nice dose of modernity with the slimness of that sweater. Next, the guy in the middle, we've got just a nice long sleeve, heavy duty olive green t-shirt in cotton and some olive colored denim jeans to give a kind of vague military vibe with that color palette. Then the guy on the right, we've got this tartan pattern in the form of a brushed flannel cotton shirt and keeping the same jeans as previous tucked into some welly boots. These kind of looks are a little more urban. This is where you can certainly wear these wax and oilcloth jackets in the city and kind of dress them down so that English country language is not hitting you over the head. Also to note in these looks, you can tell that 2 of the jackets on the left are the true Barbour. This is the Ashby model, and the Ralph Lauren is somewhat reminiscent of the Belstaff jacket. This obviously has more paratrooper military references in the pocket shapes, but ultimately you can see the edginess of the styling in that jacket right away. It helps to give the look a little more flair when it's pared down to a very simple outfit like this one with that flannel shirt. Number 4, layer your Barbour over a Shetland wool sweater. It is winter after all, so if you live in a climate in which the oilcloth jacket is not necessarily going to be warm enough, although believe you me, if you live in a slightly warm climate, an oiled cotton jacket is by far not the most breathable thing in the world. Be warned, these things wear very warm. But if you by chance live in a cooler climate, a nice scratchy lamb's wool sweater can really help to round out this look for even the draftiest of days. With some of these looks, I've got just classic crew necks, or that great heathered gray cable knit, or a deep rich hit of purple, or on the right, a rich marled olive with a window pane overcheck. And on the far left, a heathered olive color and a great shawl neck cut. And as far as formality goes, I've run the gamut between some nice dark blue jeans, some olive denim, some olive corduroys, or some gray flannels, jockeying through the formalities depending on your trousers. And of course you could accessorize with some lovely tweed caps, some neck scarves, or full-on wool scarves to help winterize your look. But again, generally with these looks, the idea is simplicity in your pieces and your silhouette. Just pay attention to your colors and your materials so that these kind of looks feel a little more interesting than just a plain white shirt under your wax cotton jacket. Things like the Shetland sweater help to add a really rich textural language against the oilcloth jacket, so you get a little more visual depth. And finally, number 5, for warmer days, just wear a polo shirt. For another take on a classic simple pairing, if you got a slightly warmer autumn or winter day ahead of you, you don't feel like wearing too much, try to keep a nice collared shirt, in this case on a soft knit polo, as a clean base layer underneath your wax jacket. Here you can play around with color a little bit, although obviously with this grouping I kept the color palette relatively limited to these earth tones and olives with that nice punch of purple in the center. Purple accents olives and browns wonderfully in that it adds a nice punch but does not jump too far outside this rich tonality. And it also gives a relatively dark tone even in its most saturated versions. And for just a touch of texture, I've also thrown on some neck scarves and various paisleys, so that you've got a little touch of something up around the neck. But again, similar to the last handful of looks, you can take a very simple pairing like jeans and a polo shirt, and if you're conscious of a cohesive color story, you can keep your accessories mostly rugged with some slip-on boots and that worn wax cotton jacket. You can do things like wear a neck scarf, which otherwise may be a little too fancy for some guys. But when you play off the ruggedness of the rest of your outfit, that little bit of dandy can feel more sophisticated than flashy. And of course these looks can easily be swapped out for t-shirts instead of polos, but the collar on these shirts does help to add a slight degree of formality, which also helps to contrast against the ruggedness of the jeans and the wax jackets. Okay, so that's going to wrap us up for this week, guys. Like I said, generally this is kind of a study in color and material. The oilcloth jacket or wax cotton jacket or Barbour, Belstaff jacket, it's certainly a wardrobe staple. These are investment pieces that can be worn over a lifetime, and I hope you can see that through attention to color and material, they do not require you to have to go out and buy an English estate and a Land Rover in order for them to feel at home. You can throw it on over some nice basics, and it really helps to give that touch of English heritage to anything it's paired with. And I think the real trick to making sure that they keep a modern edge is to pair them with deeper, darker earth tones for the fall and winter months and play off of their textural quality. Same as you would an old beat up pair of blue jeans. And if you'd like to get more inspirational imagery in your mailbox, be sure and click the link down below and join the Some Notes on Style Patreon, where you will receive the monthly style notebook with all the corresponding inspirational imagery for each week's topic, as well as breakdowns of all the outfits featured in each episode. Or if you'd like to help support the channel in a smaller way, you can contribute a small one-time donation through Buy Me a Coffee. And if you're just watching along, I appreciate that too. If you're liking the video, please give me a thumbs up. If you're enjoying the channel, click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Once again, the channel is Some Notes on Style. I'm your host, Joseph. See you again next time, guys. Bye.